day that I'm going live on all of our pages and everything. And I know I'm probably not going to make this a habit, but I just read something today and I wanted to share it with you. It was in Matthew chapter 28. I'm finishing up Matthew in my personal reading. And after the resurrection of Jesus, Jesus told the disciples to meet him on a mountain in Galilee. They had already talked about it, and he said, to meet him there. And so that's what they did. And it's an interesting thing because in Matthew 28, verse 16 and 17, it says, when the disciples saw Jesus, they worshiped him. Of course they would, right? They fell at his feet and they worshiped him. But it says something else. It says, but some of them doubted. And that line kind of stops me a little bit because I'm like, why would they doubt? Why would they doubt? Like they just saw Jesus crucified, yeah, a few days before, but now he's alive and in front of them. And so it kind of always confuses me, like, why would they doubt? And so just kind of doing a little research on that and thinking about that. Um, Even though Jesus was right there in front of them, they could see him, they could hear him, they're looking at him. He's the risen Lord. You just go, what's happening? Well, if you look at that word doubt in the Greek, it's the word Matthew uses for doubt. It does not mean unbelief. It actually means hesitation. And this hesitation means to waver a little bit, to have something else going on in your head at the same time that you're seeing something. It's actually the same word that was used when Peter stepped out of the boat. Remember that story? When Peter stepped out of the boat in faith and he walks on the water. So he's responding in faith, but there's a moment there where something's happening in his head too. Like he sees the reality that he's doing this thing through the power of Christ, like he's walking on water, but something else is happening. There's a hesitation in his mind, there's a doubt. That's the word that's being used, and everything becomes a little overwhelming and he starts to sink. Well, that's what's happening right here in this moment. It's only that word for doubt in the Greek, it's only used twice in the book of Matthew, one for Peter and now here when they're worshiping Jesus after the resurrection. And it's interesting because the disciples weren't rejecting Jesus. Neither was Peter that day. And in this moment, they weren't rejecting Jesus, but they were overwhelmed by the moment. And that's understandable, right? Like we read these stories and we think, oh, yeah, Jesus is alive. And we sing the song, he is alive and I'm forgiven. That's great. And it's a wonderful thing. And we have Easter and all of that. But they were living this moment. They knew Jesus died. They watched him suffer. Their hope was buried with Jesus. Like they didn't have any hope. Like they were real. And now they're standing in front of him alive. He's alive. He's victorious over sin. Everything that he ever said was absolutely true. And so this isn't just them experiencing the joy of that, they're actually trying to process it. There's a weight, there's a heaviness like in their spirit. They're just trying to think, okay, everything that he said, it's starting to make sense because remember they didn't understand exactly what Jesus was trying to do. They were having this realization, this moment where their entire lives are about to change and they felt it. And here's to me what matters the most when I read that about doubt, about this hesitation, this thinking about something, but being in the moment too, like wondering, like, how's everything going to change? Um, Jesus knows everything, right? Like, and even though he knows what's going on, he doesn't correct their way of thinking. He doesn't pause like the moment and address it. He doesn't wait for them to have understanding and like clarity for their future. He steps up and what does he say? He says, he just tells them, he says, all authority has been given to me. And then he tells them, now I want you to go. And this tells me something about how Jesus works in my life, how he works in your life. He does not wait for us to have perfect, unwavering faith. Jesus always works with a faith that is honest and ready to admit where we really are. Some of us think that we have to have everything figured out. Like we gotta know this, we gotta know that, we gotta have plans for everything that we do before God can use us. Some of us feel like we're uneducated, we don't have the ability, we don't, all of the reasons that go through our head. That's the wavering. That's the hesitation. Like If the Lord's saying, I want you to go and pray for this person, well, what if I know that God can do it. I know what he's done for me. I know that he could uh, touch their life. But what if that's the hesitation? And we think sometimes that we have to have full clarity first, but that's not how it works. How it works with Jesus is understanding, standing at his feet, worshiping him first. And even though we have this hesitation, this doubt, we still obey. And the clarity comes later in life. In the kingdom of God, obedience comes first. That's all it is. You can worship the Lord and you can live a life of worship and still process and still be thinking like, Lord, how is this going to work? It's okay to worship him, hands up, worship him with your whole life and not understand exactly how he's going to do what seems impossible. You can trust him and still feel like heavy, like, Lord, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going through this thing. I'm trusting you. I don't know. You can follow him while you're still learning what life is going to be with him. Think about these disciples, like they didn't know what their future, they knew their future was about to change. They knew like Jesus standing in front of them changed everything. They don't know what that really meant. And that's okay. And it's okay for us too. Like take this step of faith and we say, Jesus, you have my yes, you have my all, you have everything. But I don't know exactly what that means. And that's all right. And maybe that's where you're at today. You believe, you worship, but there's still some hesitation. There's still some wondering, how is this going to happen? And I guess I wanted to encourage you, as I'm encouraging myself, that Jesus isn't afraid of our hesitation. He is not afraid of afraid of our hesitation. Even with Peter, like Peter started to hesitate when he was walking. What did Jesus do? Did Jesus say, okay, Peter, you started looking at the waves and the water and you started to sink. See you later, bucko. He doesn't do that. He doesn't. He actually reached down and he pulled him up. And this is the key thing. One of the key things to know about Jesus is he understands how our brains work. And he's not afraid of our hesitation. He actually meets us in our hesitation. But when he meets us there, he says, it's okay. Come forward. It's time to act. You need to trust me. So we worship him and we step out in faith. We go where God sends us because the risen Christ is not looking for perfect faith. He's looking for a surrendered heart that is willing to follow him. And that is how we live a significant life. It truly is just surrendering daily to his call. Even when we have doubt, even if we're like, Lord, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know why. All I know is what you said in your word, and I'm going to trust it. And that's what we do today. We're just going to trust him. So as you start your day today, the Lord has people in your path that you're supposed to reach in faith. And I would encourage you, let Jesus have your yes today. Even when you're like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Just trust him. So God bless you. And we'll see you. I don't think I'm going to do this every day. This is too much for me, but it just keeps happening every morning. The last 3 days, I just have, maybe it's because I haven't been in church and I need to have some type of outlet. So I encourage you, tomorrow night is Wednesday, to come to small group at Eudora at 7 p.m. and or you can come to small group at Calvary at 6 p.m. So at Calvary, we're talking about the parables of Jesus, and Eudora, we're talking about First John. So I just encourage you, or it's going to be a great time of fellowship there too. God bless you today. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you sometime soon. Bye.